reason it worked so well is that you were able to encapsulate that and actually add to that within a context that, you know, people nowadays are going to understand more readily. And I think that was, you know, a real score on your behalf. It was fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Because it's, yeah, I mean, it's a big thing, isn't it, to take on something which has got its own little arena of mythology or whatever around it and rework it and actually come out with something which is, you know, got the same gravitas, got the same attack, and yet speaking another language. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And it's also my first real drum and bass production like that, you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I think of like Crass. I always like, you know, you're from the UK, or you're not? Was you from England, right?
Yeah.
So and DMB drum and bass is very much an English sound, and
right.
So I'm like, you know what? Like that's how I'm gonna kind of like first start building that bridge, and then with that beat and keeping it raw with the vocal, it was like, okay, now I have a place. And then I started bringing in the bass swells, and it just felt like the attitude was like in the right pocket, and it just felt like you could hear that in the club, and people would be bad for the rocks in the club, you know, and having that same kind of like, you know, just getting into it and dancing and having fun, and then, you know, the rest kind of came naturally after that. But I mean, it is tough too, because you guys gave me stems for all these other songs, and they're all like classic Crass records. So it was that was also difficult. Like, how do I choose? You know, like
how did you choose?
So how I chose wasn't necessarily my favorite Crass song. It was more about like what can work in the context of how I could produce it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
right? Like I got to think of like I almost think of when I'm in the studio, I'm thinking of vocals as samples. You know, not like long poetry, but like I need to cut certain sections of a vocal that like sound really good together. Like Bad from the Roxy. Okay, you know, like that. Those are like two strong samples, and I could use those as themes.
Yeah, and jump them
production.
Around. Yeah.
So, you know, and then I just like, and I think of vocals, like, cause I also produce like other languages that I don't necessarily understand, like Korean or like Spanish. And I listen rhythmically, more so lyric. I mean, obviously I can't listen lyrically. So I'm listening rhythmically, and I feel the rhythm, and then I could start getting into a space where I can write a melody or foundation or that. Yeah. So yeah, it's like, you know, I kind of put all those into the hat when I'm going through. Like it's just incredible just to like get that drive of all your stems and the guitar sounds, the crunchiness and the drums, and it's just so raw. It's so like it's truly punk rock. You know, it's it was a blessing to hear that and you know, kind of vicariously transport myself into the studio with you guys, you know, back then. I mean, when did you guys make that song?
But that, I mean, it was sort of, you said last time we talked about having sort of quite a root yourself within punk, didn't it? We were talking about sort of post-punk, and you're in Brooklyn, you were, weren't you? And was it, did you feel you yourself were going back into a sort of old milieu that you knew and moved in, or what? Yes.
I mean, I know we talked about that, and like, you know, before I was a DJ, before I was a producer, I was in bands, and my first bands were like bands where I was screaming on a microphone, and like, you know, upset about something, angry about something else, and like venting and finding my space with a community that can help me put my, you know, like put my issues out there, and that community was really important to me. And as you know, like my first favorite bands were more like New York, like we were talking about Brooklyn, like New York straight-edge hardcore bands. Minor Threat was like one on the first mixtape that I've ever heard. So, you know, hearing Ian MacKaye and like that DC punk sound
Yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah.
was like definitely, you know, my roots. So, and then eventually, you know, as you learn more about punk and hardcore, you have to learn about Crass, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
like, you know, being in the West Coast, I'm talking like Southern California,
Hmm.
California, and you know, finding out like who are the definers of the sound, and you know, you can't go without Crass, you can't go without the Exploited, you can't go without Minor Threat, you can't go without like all these different groups from all different time
Mm,
periods.
mm. Yeah, yeah. And do you feel that you've carried any of that? And obviously, you're still very aware, sort of socially, and you know, I've watched some of your stuff, and you're making some really, you know, cute, astute comments on what's going on. And have you carried that anger or rage or whatever you want to call it? Do you still, is that still an active part of you, or just occasionally that comes through? Or
Yeah, I mean, there, of course, like we all have that. I can still have my anger, but it's about how you address it. And I
yeah,
feel like it's like the addressing part is where you can get the most out of or be the most efficient about, but like, you know, the resolve. What
yeah,
is like the solution? And if we can address the issue in a way that, you know, it is like clear and concise and has empathy and love as well
yeah,
attached to that. I think that's one thing I've learned throughout the years is that when I was a kid, I was just like, when I'm angry about something, I'm just yelling and screaming.
yeah, yeah, sure.
And now I'm thinking more about, you know, if I address something and I add love and empathy with that,
Hmm.
I think we can get to the common ground much closer.
I so agree. I mean, it's precisely my own sort of development from, you know, the sort of street activism of Crass and the whole thing. And then suddenly you realize, hang on, you know, do I really know what peace is? Do I really know what love is in a social context? And I really sort of thought, you know, we've been shouting the slogans and they were very genuine, but I don't think we really knew where to go. And, you know, we'd got all the lines, but they didn't add up because we hadn't looked at ourselves enough. And that's what I'm hearing you saying, you know,
Right.
that in looking inward, that's when we start being more able to sort of bring compassion or love or peace or whatever you want to call it,
Right.
goodness into
Yeah.
life.
Right.
And that's been totally my journey since Crass, you know, over the 40 years of
Right.
going deeper and deeper and deeper inward, looking for something which is solid ground that I can then say, well, look, this is solid ground. And it's generally speaking called love,
Yeah.
you know, unconditional love.
Absolutely.
Um, and that once it's there, it doesn't need defending anymore. That's the beauty, I think.
Yeah.
Uh, and the heart opens up to such a huge field of operation, and that's I would hazard, and I believe that's why you and I collided at this time and space, because that happens if you open your heart. Then these sort of strange, I mean, I know we've had some reaction on some of our social media. What are you doing? You know, like from the sort of the punk police don't like, you know, stepping out of line. You all know you can't play that game. But the game, even within Crass, and we were ferociously angry, but I think there was always a look to yourself, like there is no authority but yourself, which was one of our biggest slogans.
Yeah.
And that was saying, look to yourself, find your own inner truth, and then get out. Don't just buy into what the media say you should be. And
Right.
I think there are so many, particularly creative people, who understand that, which is what they're trying to bring. That's why it's so radical, really, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
radical because do you dare go there? Unconditional love? Ooh, no, that would be far too dangerous. I'm not going there. So, and and I think that the part of we play is to introduce people to it in different ways. To actually, yeah, I dare put my foot out onto that, you know, that piece of ice or whatever.
Right.
Um, and that's what I find. I mean, I was so excited when I heard that you were up for doing it, because I loved that crossover. I loved that you know, working. I mean, I've worked quite a bit with the Bloody Beetroots,
Yeah.
which is sort of the same domain, and love the differences, love same poetry coming out of me, but it has to be bang on the beat and all this sort of
Yeah.
stuff. But
Yeah.
that's fantastic. You know, we learn and we grow that way into being proper musicians, because proper musicians go into the concert hall and play what others in front of them, don't they? And I sort of feel like that sometimes. You know, I take my heart, but then the form it has to play is determined by who I'm with. You know,
Yeah.
I don't decide, it's who I'm with that decides. You get a great bassist comes into your studio, you're not going to say, no, but you go with it, don't you? Because you don't know what the hell's going to come out of it. And,
Right. Yeah. That's why I love these kinds of collaborations, because you really don't know what it's going to be like or how it's going to turn out, but you just have to have trust in the process and
yeah,
let go.
yeah,
Let go of like your own rule book and just go, it's music.
yeah,
And, you know, I mean, the whole point is to do something different,
yes,
you know? And yeah, it's true what you're saying. Like every genre has their own police, you know?
yes, yeah,
Just to make sure that the walls and the boundaries are very strong. And,
yeah.
I knew it was going to happen on one end or the other. It just, and that's when it does happen. That means I feel like you're doing something right. You're doing something different. You're doing something that is not normal.
Sorry, that cut out just the last bit you were talking. So
I
could
was
you
just saying, when the police come out, it means you're doing something right.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because you're doing
Totally.
something not in the norm.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, like we're supposed to be defined by what you think of how we're defined.
Yeah.
Like we can't live like that. You can't live like that. So
Absolutely.
the problem with me is that I've been like crossing over and building bridges with so many other communities that I think the police that were like banging on my door, they're just tired. They're like,
Yeah.
I'm done. I just give up on Steve Aoki.
Yeah.
He like, because I'm always like, oh wait, you're mad I work with this artist? Well, I'm gonna work with someone else that you wouldn't even expect, and then just keep doing it. And they're like, okay, all right, we just give up.
Yeah. Well, I know given the real police, we were under constant surveillance from MI5, which are probably, pretty much CIA, whatever, and still are occasionally, but then we were constantly. And people used to say, oh, yeah, it's awful. And I said, no, it shows we're doing the right thing. And if you're trying to oppose the status quo, if you're trying to make change, if they're worried enough to put their private army against you, then you're doing the right job, aren't
Right.
you? I mean, so
right.
I never complained about that. And I feel with the sort of music police, I remember I did a gig at the London Jazz Festival, and it was a poem about America and my unhappiness with the war in Iraq. And there were some guys at a table, it was a big audience, unusually big for, my poetry and that. And there was this table of older guys booing from right the way through it. So afterwards, I just went up and I said, hey, what's your problem? I'm only sort of saying what I want to say. I'm not throwing it at you. They said, you shouldn't make jazz political. And I almost choked. I said, I beg your pardon. Do you know what jazz is? Yeah, it's not political. I said, have you ever looked at the roots? Have you ever heard of John Coltrane, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? It's just extraordinary. I mean, I don't know what they wanted. But I mean, I feel, the sort of jazz has an absolute history of radicalism, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Both political, psychological, philosophical. Otherwise, it isn't jazz.
Right.
And I think that spreads out into all of our genres. There are people who are playing around imitating without any soul, without any heart. And then there are people really are onto something. And you can't really qualify it, can you? Why is that working, et cetera, et cetera? That's what the music business can never understand. They can never manufacture true art.
Right.
they can manufacture a band who might, you know, have a year of
Mm-hmm.
a little, but they'll soon disappear from sight. When
Right.
people are talking that language, it doesn't matter whether it's jazz or soul or punk or dance or whatever, techno. When people have got a heart, it shows, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
it touches and works. And I actually think the authorities are terrified of this
Yeah.
because it's counter fear.
Right.
It goes against everything that the media and those in government attempt to do to make us frozen with fear.
Right.
And what people like yourself is doing, you burst the bloody walls down. You give joy to people, you give love to people, and then that spreads, you know, and that's all. That's it. All we can do, isn't it? Actually,
It's exactly what you're saying. Music is I always say is music is just a tool to express a feeling.
Yes.
And it's a very natural tool. It's been used for like thousands of years,
Forever. Yeah. Yeah.
and how to connect with people.
Yeah.
And like that's why like it doesn't matter the genre, because it's the sound and how it makes you feel in
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
moments. And it's also not just like how you feel, you know, in your ears, but how you feel with the people around you
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
environment that you're in, whether it's a, you know, a basement with like 20 people at a punk show, or a festival outdoors, Glastonbury, or, you know, it doesn't matter. It's like who you're with, like all those things are, you know, the essence about connecting with other people and making them feel something, you know, make them feel special.
It allows us to fuse, doesn't it? I mean, it's almost when you're in that sort of crowd, you cease to be, don't you? You're just it, this sort of mass of sort of joy or whatever it is that's touching people, and basically getting out of your own way. I mean, you're just suddenly removed and you're in the sublime, really, aren't you? And I've felt that in dance halls, in concert halls, looking at the sunset or whatever, you know, when you're removed from your own sort of petty little problems in life, which always actually are just self-interest, and you move away from self-interest into a domain of, wow, it all looks like something's happening here, and it is happening because it's sort of not happening. It's just happening because you're there.
Yeah.
I like that sort of feeling, because when it's really beautiful, it's not by design in a funny sort of way. It just happens, doesn't it? I feel that when I work with other musicians. I mean, I work mostly with jazz musicians, and we never talk about what we're going to do. We
Yeah.
just turn up. You know, that I have the script, but I don't know how I'm going to perform it. They determine that.
Yeah.
We never rehearse, and we just get on with it. But the fusion, the sense of not existing, but something's happening, is really, well, you must know that feeling. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
just,
absolutely. I mean, I think any musician, you ask them, they trust their gut.
yeah,
Like
that's right.
there's no formula, you know. Like if it hits you in that space, like once it hits you in that space, you just want to stay there. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that's why we do this for our entire careers, our entire lives
yeah,
are dedicated to music, because we found that space and we want to stay there, you know, and
mm.
we also want to share, you
Yeah,
know, like you create in your space and you feel that and you're like, okay, this is awesome. Now the next thing is I want to share this feeling with someone else.
mm.
How do we
Mm.
do that? By performing,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
by being on a
yeah,
stage and like spilling our guts on the stage,
yeah,
like revealing our heart and
yeah.
showing how vulnerable that this is supposed to make you feel, that nothing else, there's no need to put a shield up.
That's
But
so key. That's so key what you said, the vulnerability, because that's exactly it. It's that sense of being prepared to rip away all your pretenses as an artist. And you stand naked, don't you, basically? But when you're
and
live,
then everyone else gets naked too, you know.
yes,
And you're
utterly.
like, the people that are closed, they just didn't get it. They
No,
just didn't get
no,
it, because that's the whole
that's right.
point. We're
Yeah,
all supposed to be kind of like, you know, just hanging there in the breeze and just not giving a shit about anything else, you know.
yeah,
And
yeah,
if you get you get to that place, then that's exactly where we're all supposed to be. And if you get a lot of people there, that energy is like, it's just insane. You know,
yeah,
it's absolutely
yeah.
insane.
totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And addictive. Like that's why, you know, for me, I tour like constantly. You know, like pre-COVID, I've been touring 250 shows a year for
Yeah,
15 years, and
yeah,
I don't have a reason to do less. You know, I absolutely love playing shows.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
And do you feel like you're a body of something, or that's what I feel, you know? I mean, I felt a terrific connection with you, although I'm not really knowing your music or really knowing a huge amount about you. Obviously, I've informed myself since we got in touch, but it's sort of like, it's almost like you know people are there, although you don't even know who they are, sort of feeling, isn't it? It's sort of like so damned easy, you know,
yeah,
and that's the sort of reality I think you're, well, I understand you suggesting, you know, like you take away all this stuff, you get up on stage, you inspire people, and suddenly they realize they're not what they thought they were, because they're all inspired and they're all connecting and they all become one. You know, it's that the sort of Buddhist thing, you know, all is one, you know, and one is all.
right, right,
And it
exactly.
is, music can take people into that domain, whether they're sitting with their girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever they're doing, or with a huge crowd, or sitting in a train. You know, it can happen, can't you? It's like when we fall in love, but it's total. It's just everyone falling in love with the world is far bigger deal than a beautiful guy or a beautiful woman you might fall in love with, I think, anyway.
Yeah,
And that's what music does. It allows us to do that. We can love everyone. That's why I love the Beatles, I must say, because
my favorite band in the world,
yeah.
Beatles. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Well, but on a par there, I think. Yeah, because they seem to have got it. And I was always very, very fond of Lennon. I thought he came from all angles. You never knew quite how he was going to play it, but it would always be something very surprising, I
yes,
found.
absolutely.
Yeah, it was almost like the first punk band, I think. You know, that
Oh
great
yeah,
New York album that Lennon did. You know, it was punk, really, wasn't it? It was all
right.
activism and get out on the street and, well, you know, great
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised. That's, you know, that because it's so common when you meet up with someone and you seem to gel that you're going to have a lot of the same references.
yeah, yeah. It's a great feeling. You know, it's because just like you were saying, you know, with music, it's the closest thing to having that spiritual feeling of being one with
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like that we're all really the same. We're like, I mean, we are technically the same. Like, you know, we
Yeah.
have the same heart. We're the same skin,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and you know, it's just we are human Homo sapiens. We're all the same, and we can connect through that. You know, and find synergies, and not feel so divided. You
I
know,
think the terrible, terrible truth is that, you know, in nature we are connected. It's indisputable. I mean, it's a fact we exist, and that's the proof of it. And it's only governance, control, all of that which divides us. We're not divided. I've travelled not extensively around the world, but everywhere I've been in the world, I've met with good people. The only time I've had problems is when the good people are wearing the wrong uniform. You know, because uniform seem exactly that. It says uniform, not unite. Uniform. It's a sort of this strange police, this strange army, which are not of us. Actually, beneath them are just ordinary people, if they would but take the uniform off. And by degrees, everything's like that, you know. And as we break that down, I mean, I sort of believe that's the only way towards true peace, is breaking down, not shooting people and not bombing people and not arguing with people, but actually, where's our similarity? Because it's deep. It's like you're
right?
saying, you know, we're
Exactly.
all one thing. What are
Right.
we arguing about? Some political idea that someone passed on to us 30 years ago. Let's look at us now. And actually, oh, wow. Yeah, no. Yeah, we're both there, aren't we? It's so simple, isn't it? Actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got a little note on my desk here and it says, get out of your own way, which is an old Buddhist thing, I think. And I just go for that because when I start getting a bit hooty about stuff, you know, a bit uppity, then I just look at that and say, yeah, okay, Pen. Fuck it, mate. Take a
I
break.
might have to copy you, Penny. I'm gonna put that
Yeah.
on. I like that line. I like that line a lot.
Yeah. It's
Get out of your own way.
but isn't it the case that when, well, certainly is when I'm on stage, I'm no longer there. I have got out of my own way. And if I don't get out of my own way when I'm on stage, then I'll fuck up. I'll make a bad show of it
Yeah.
because I'm being too self-conscious. You can't be self-conscious on stage, can you? I mean, if you're self-conscious on stage, geez, everyone's going to see this prick wandering around doing fuck all.
Yeah.
It's only when you break through that wall, isn't it? It's a bit like runners, I guess, because there's just meant to be a wall you run through, and once you've gone through it, you can go on running for the rest of your life, and you're not going to knacker yourself. I mean, I experienced it a little bit when I was a runner, but not very, very profoundly. But I knew what it meant.
Right. 100%.
Yeah,
I mean, like we're on stage to navigate the storyline.
Yeah.
We're storytellers, you know, and the better storytellers will be a better performance, you know, and the better performance is based on being real, being authentic, you know, being true, and not and being confident about your story.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're iffy about it, like yeah, you know, like you were like, I don't know if I want to hear the story anymore. Like you have to really sell the story. Like you have to be like, this is my story, and I'm gonna share it with you, and you can leave if you want, but I'm gonna give you my heart.
Yeah.
And the people that will stay they'll give you their heart, and that's like that's when it changes. That's the interchange that I look for, is when they give their heart. When it's like, you gave me your heart, I'm gonna give you my heart, and I'm like, now our hearts are colliding, even though we don't even know each other, and it doesn't matter, and it feels so good.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that is what is the true meaning of love, I believe. It's exactly that thing. It's a sort of collision, and a bit like the planets grew through collision, and then suddenly there are units, but they're completely one thing, and they're all mutually interdependent. We can't escape each other. I mean, COVID's proven that in a strange way. We can't escape, you know, and sadly, you know, some people have put on more armor, you know, they're armoring their whole psychology.
Yeah,
and
it's true.
And that's dangerous as well. It's a very unhealthy thing to do.
Yeah.
And fear, you know, really destroys the immune system. Very bad thing to do, etc., which is why it's always been used as a major tool against the population. You know, with the great army coming from the media, you know, filling us full of fear, because it wears us down, it breaks us up, you know. And what's the antidote? Music and poetry, you know, the expressions of love, which are absolutely, they were producing beautiful music and beautiful poems even in the concentration camps, you know, and that's what kept them alive, kept them radiant and beautiful, you know. And it's an indestructible force. And some of us might fall by the way, but so what? You know, we at least lived. I used to feel that when I was climbing. I used to be a mountaineer, and I always knew on every climb I ever did, there'd be one moment which was, oh no, this is my last move ever, sort of thing. I'm going to come off. And I didn't, and I kept going. But lots did come off. But they came off doing the very thing, challenging life, challenging themselves, making a statement of this love, which they were prepared to risk their lives for, and then losing their lives. It doesn't matter? No, it doesn't, because they've lived the life they wanted to live. And I feel that with ideas as well, and music and poetry, is being perfectly willing to go so out there that no one can understand what the hell you are talking about, singing about, but they know it. They don't understand what you're doing, but they know what you're doing. And that's the key, isn't it? Because we can bullshit. I'm the world's greatest bullshitter. And I can bullshit with all that narrative stuff and tell the proper stories. But I also know that when I'm talking the truth, I don't even understand what I'm bloody talking about. But it feels right. It's like playing a lick on a guitar or some strange drum roll. Like, oh, what was that? I'll never be able to do that again. Something passes by. But those are the things that are the keys. They're the keys to the sort of lock of the sublime or the divine or whatever you want to call it, aren't they? I mean, there's sort of awful lot of similarities, sort of like with Zen koans and that sort of thing of, hey, these are things that are going to trick you out of your complacency. And that's another angle of what I think as musicians or poets we try to do, is to trick people out of their complacency. Suddenly they are forced to get out of their own way because something's hit them so hard they can't remain standing there.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of, I've compared that to sort of like samurai stuff as well. I mean, that's sort of that whole complete exactness. And if you present someone with exact love, they've got two choices. They either sort of die on the spot or they put their arms around you forever, for eternity. You know, it's sort of, it's death or life, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was incredible to finally work with you. I mean, this has been a big deal, Penny.
Well, likewise, and I really hope, I'd love to. I'm sure I'm going to come up with some crazy idea, and I'm going to be back in touch with you saying, "Well,
yeah, absolutely.
Hey, how about this one?"
Yeah, no, please, let's keep the conversation dialogue
We've
open.
got to. No, we've got to, because I think I mean, not just for, you know, because I really like what I know of you, but I think that what we could, the element that we can create together, that sort of huge age difference or time difference or whatever it is so valuable to do that. You know, that's when I'm, in a funny way, you know, like I was saying on the social media, there's one or two punk police saying, what are you doing? Well, we're doing it because we love you, mate. And if you don't understand it, oh, tough shit. Get a brain. Because that's what, it's so important, you know, when we can do what you and I are doing.
Yeah,
Because it's opening up so many new doors. So anyway, yeah, I mean, I'd love to. Sometime we're gonna do something together. I know that. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
And did you think more about the T-shirt idea we had?
Yeah, I was coming up with some ideas, and then I stopped. I had like this one with, you know, you're writing on the outside, and I wanted to put an image on the inside.
Yeah.
Just something very crass. So I'm still coming up with it. I think, well, no, we definitely need to do that. Just like for the fans, you know.
And did you I sent you the essay I did about the Roxy. Did you get it?
Yes, I did. I did.
Good,
yeah, it's incredible.
Right, good.
Incredible. I loved it. We got to share that somehow online. Let people like hear the story, you know.
Yeah, actually, we should run it. When maybe we could do that. We could run it as a special. Ben's here actually from One Little Indian, and so I've just faced him. So we could run it, couldn't we? We could run it sort of so that your stuff's out there, and then we can sort of bung in the story as well, which would be great, wouldn't it?
That would be great. I mean, because there's so much there, you know. There's so much history there. It's great to bring the song back and bring like the context, you know, from like, you know, from your words and you know, it's
another
great.
bit of weight. All right then, Macy. Well, look, absolutely fabulous talking with you, and yeah, we'll do it again.
Definitely, Penny. Thank you so much. That was great.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, huge love to you.
Hey, you too. All right. Bye-bye.